So there, almost 25 to 1. I am going to kick off. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Mark Williams. Thanks for coming to my talk, How to Lead Data-Driven Change, the High-Level Steps. Now, you may know that Gethin Ellis and I have recently published a book, Building a Data-Driven Culture. And someone has very kindly posted a review. Data is the new gold, they said. But we think it's the people who make it happen. And so whilst this is about data-driven change, it's people that are the focus of this talk. So a little introduction about me. I've been delivering change for a while, somewhat over 35 years. The vast majority of that has been customer-centric, data-driven type change. So I've held program delivery, I've been a head of change, I've been IT director on 1 or 2 occasions, and I don't know, I've probably been involved with hundreds of initiatives, if not more, over the years. I've been an exec, I've been a non-exec, and I've had a fair bit of experience, I hope, in not-for-profit, in financial services, public sector, some digital outsourcing, legal sectors, and 1 or 2 more. So hopefully some breadth, some depth, some length and variety of experience to offer you. Now, for the last few years, I've been working with Gethin Ellis. Now he's a thoroughbred data specialist and Microsoft MVP. That's most valued professional to you and I. He's also my pal. And together, we try to put the human back into technology, aka FIT, P-H-I-T. Our focus is helping humans with data and customer-driven advice, coaching, consultancy, solutions, and training. We host the FIT podcast, and we also produce FIT Insights. Both of these contain free advice and tips and techniques just to help you. You're welcome to connect with Gethin or myself if we're not connected, and just remind us where you found us from. If you have any questions or observations today, pop them into the chat on here. I'll try and keep on top, but to be honest, I'm not great at monitoring the chat, so hopefully Gethin will do that for me. And if something comes to mind to you after the session, do feel free to send me or Gethin an email. My details are on the screen, and you may have Gethin's as well, but they're gethin@gethinellis.com. Now, hopefully our reputations are built on practical, common sense approaches, getting the job done and delivering outcomes. That's just how we do it. We hope you can find something of value here that you can put into use. Now, if you're wondering who that graphic is, well, that's Berry Wand. Stories, we think, are a great way of getting messages across, and she's the star of our story. But more on her later. At a high level, we're going to try and cover all of these areas, and our aim is to give you a bit of a taster, perhaps set your spider senses tingling. But there will be a few really key messages to convey as well. So we're going to cover how to start, the challenges, some methods and frameworks, how to get some stakeholders on board, building that data-driven mindset, overcoming resistance to change, some governance, people you might need, and recognizing and mitigating the red flags. Now, our book, Building a Data-Driven Culture, a step-by-step guide, is available on Amazon. Now we'll put the details of that in the chat at some point. And we've also got some pre-built workshops. And if you're interested in those, whether that's on vision and skills and literacy and architecture and things you can see on the screen there, either direct message Gethin or myself. The first chat's free. If you want to have a browse, there's the website. Have a go at that too. So here's a little bit of audience participation, of course. So do you feel there's value to be gained or more value to be gained from being data-driven or more data-driven in your organization? So if you do, I'm asking you to pop your hands up, please, on the hands up feature. And whilst you're doing that, or if you're doing that, what's stopping you from getting that value? And so on that one, I'd like you to put some comments in the chat, please. Now, whilst you're doing that, let me introduce you to Berry Wand. Now, Berry Wand's career is in technology. She's been a DBA, a consultant, a trainer. She has lots of experience and realizes the value that being data-driven can bring. She's ambitious. She's keen to progress. She's keen to continue learning. She wants to move into a data-driven leadership role. Now, Berry is a figment of the imagination, but the issues she encounters are real-life problems that you might be experiencing and hopefully can resonate with. Now, I am obliged to say, all characters and organizations used in this presentation are entirely fictional. Now, Berry was feeling excited. It's June 2021, and she had just secured her first Chief Data Officer role for a police force in the UK. And as their Chief Data Officer, she was in charge of creating a data-driven corporate culture. But in your organization, you may or you may not have a Chief Data Officer, a CDO. CDO roles are becoming more common, but data itself is not new. Financial information and financial reports is data. That's not new. Now, there will be, therefore, one or more people, senior executives, who are responsible for overseeing and managing the governance of data. But doing CDO stuff may just be a part of their role. Or these senior executives may think that others are responsible for data. Let's say data quality, for example. But who else, other than, say, a sales or a marketing director, should be responsible, accountable for customer data? And maybe people think that this stuff just happens. So maybe they don't fully recognize their responsibility or their role, or who else they should work with as far as data is concerned. Or maybe some people are only involved in doing some data management and governance. For example, some just ensure that data in fields is complete, not that is consistent across databases. Or maybe some people are only involved in doing data management and governance on some data. For example, finance will be looking at financial data, revenues and costs. Well, they have a legal responsibility to produce a true and fair view, and they get audited on it. But whether you're small, medium or large, in the public or private sectors, in most organizations, data has become increasingly important to drive value. So who in your organization might be doing CDO work? Is it you? Maybe you should start by writing down your potential stakeholders. Use the RACI framework. Who has responsibility, accountability? Who should be consulted, informed, involved? Now, Berry feels that she has what she needs to make it happen. The Assistant Chief Constable of the police force, we'll call him Graham, has a vision for the force for the next 5 to 10 years, where it becomes a data-driven organisation. And Berry's appointment is the first building block put in place to allow that journey to happen. So she felt she had a vision, but it was the implementation and delivery of that vision that still needed to be worked out. Or so she thought. Now, some might say that the theory behind creating a data-driven culture is perhaps easy, and some that it's the practical implementation that can prove challenging. So where do you start? Well, you need to recognize that your data-driven culture and strategy needs to be aligned with the business goals and strategy. What is the point if it isn't? And one aspect that's key to most organizations' delivery is organizational culture. Now that's the shared values, the beliefs, the customs, the practices, it's the collective personality, it's behavior, it's how people interact with each other. It is how decisions are made and how work is done. It could be influenced by a range of factors, the history, the values of the organization, the leadership style, the nature of the work, and the external environment. It's often referred to or experienced as how things are done around here. That's not how we do things around here. Has anyone ever acted or said as such to you? Now, perhaps a strong positive organizational culture can lead to a more engaged and committed workforce, improved productivity, better outcomes. On the other hand, perhaps a negative or toxic culture may lead to high people turnover, low morale, poor performance. So, Organizational culture, that's where we should start, right? Well, maybe not. Why not? Well, firstly, how do you know that organizational culture isn't part of the problem? And secondly, changing organizational culture is no small thing. Getting buy into that will not be easy. Changing established mindsets rarely is. So what about the challenges? Maybe we should start there. Now, Berry has started out on her journey as a chief data officer, but she's quickly run into a range of problems. She's not naive. She was expecting some, although a sponsor in interviews suggested much was being supported. Does that sound familiar to you? So here are some of the challenges she has faced. Now, building a data-driven culture requires strong executive support, and without it, CDOs are going to struggle to get resources and the buy-in they need. Now, in Berry's case, Graham, the CEO who brought her in, left shortly afterwards after a disagreement with the CEO on organizational direction. Graham was her champion on the executive committee. So as you can imagine, having made the leap, it felt like her dream job was quickly turning into a nightmare. And also, the CEO in high-level meetings was quoted as saying, "We don't need more data to run this business. We already have enough. We know what we need to do." Now, who are the resistant to change? Research shows that it's middle management who often are the custodians of "that's how we do things round here." 42% of them, in fact. Change can be a difficult and slow process, and employees may be fearful, concerned, or unwilling to adopt new technologies and working practices. And Berry is a force full of police officers. She might be lucky. Some might appreciate the data. But it seems if they say anything at all, they say, "We don't need more IT. We've already got enough to do. Doing what we do, following our instincts. It works, it gets results." And Berry was also surprised that her IT people didn't warm to the idea. She was expecting their buy-in. "It's just more things to support and we'll only get the blame when it goes wrong," seems to be their message. In many organizations, data is siloed and difficult to access or analyze. And frankly, this can make it difficult for anyone to build a unified view of the data or develop some holistic insight. But Berry was expecting that. However, related to this, she knows that there are some data quality issues, such as incomplete or inaccurate data. Now, not only can this undermine the credibility of data-driven decision-making, it also makes it difficult to build trust in the data. Now, additionally, Berry hadn't really thought this through or had it explained that the police, like other organizations, have line of business applications. Now, in their case, it's command and control and case and custody and so on. But these are supplied nationally and their use is mandated. So her organization doesn't own this critical data, and yet it has a major influence on outcomes. So she has more stakeholders and technology bridges to engage than she thought. Building a data-driven culture probably requires that employees have a basic level of data literacy. But many perhaps lack the skills or knowledge needed to analyze and interpret that data effectively. And Gartner say that data literacy is the second biggest roadblock to CDO success. Or perhaps if you think about it this way, truly and frankly, how many users are truly proficient enough on Microsoft Word, Excel, Teams to get their job done? Most of us don't know what we don't know. So help here with literacy is almost definitely needed. Berry's old-fashioned police officers are not really renowned for their data skills. Now, data security and privacy are important concerns when working with data, and CDOs should at least know what appropriate safeguards are in place to protect sensitive data. But who is your data protection officer? Is that you? Do others think it's you? Are you tasked with both keeping personal data safe and getting the most value out of it? Could that be mutually exclusive? Now, what about if there's sensitive data? So let's say in the case of the police or law firms or unions or social and healthcare organizations, things like their case data is pretty sensitive stuff. Maybe there's a need for data Chinese walls. Now, data needs protection. In their case, cases could be thrown out of court, or perhaps worse, highly sensitive personal data is made available to one and all. And this stuff happens. Only recently, remember, with police officers' data in Northern Ireland and Cumbria. Now, you may feel within your organization, your organization isn't like this. So let's put it differently. Will your executive think that some things are highly confidential or commercial in confidence? Do people even know what that means? Or maybe some things must be shown outside of your organization. Do these terms sound familiar? What if your information and protection policies are too strict or non-existent? Or perhaps, more likely, simply not understood by your colleagues, and so labeling is incorrect. The very data you might want, you can't get at, or it's not where it should be. But watch out. Is this your problem to solve? You can easily get bogged down in here, but you shouldn't disregard it. Now, building a data-driven culture will require significant resources. How do I know? Well, what significant organizational change doesn't? There will inevitably be a need for investment in technology and training and data governance, to name some. And CDOs and others may well struggle to secure the resources they need to build their robust data-driven culture. And most organizations in the last 15 or 20 years or so have needed to cost save and do more with less. But don't lose hope. Data is not new. There will be resources already doing data, won't there? Maybe you can align with them. Now, we asked for some audience participation. Now, I haven't looked to see what we got, but I asked you to do something. The questions I asked were, do you feel there's value to be gained from being more data-driven in your organization? I asked you to put your hands up. I asked you, what's stopping you from getting what you want? I asked you to put some comments in the chat. So, whether you did or whether you didn't, and perhaps even to yourself, what did you think? What did you write down? And put some more into the chat if you want. What are the major problems you are facing in implementing your data-driven culture? Did any of the above make you think of some more? Have the comments that have gone into the chat from others made you think of some more? Could they be to do with the lack of a joined-up vision or agreed roadmap? Would an investment in skills and literacy make a difference? Or does someone need to look at the architecture, the tools, the foundations? Or is it about evolution of some or all of that for you? But whatever it is, what are you going to do about it? Did you put your hand up? Did you comment? Just talking about it won't get it done. Now, to quote, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. Barack Obama, no less. Now let's cast our minds back to Berry. She is now feeling unsupported and out on a limb. She left her previous firm partly to progress and partly to leave behind the business politics. She's starting to feel back in the hamster wheel. She's now perhaps realizing that maybe she doesn't really have the know-how to do this. Maybe she needs some help. And that, we believe, is a key message. Asking for help is never a weakness. Make sure you have the know-how. So she chats with some consultants she's heard about recently. We say you need method. Now, we're big fans of Professor W. Edwards Deming, the father of quality. Plan, do, check, act. Now we've added in clarity. And Berry loves the simplicity of what others have called the ultimate success formula. So thanks very much, Professor. But we're also big fans of Art Williams. Now, if you don't know him, he revolutionized the life assurance industry in the 1980s in the USA. And if we get some time, we'll put the link to his Just Do It speech in at the end. Well, you can Google it. Well, not now, though. So he said to Berry, not altogether flippantly, how to start? Well, you just do it. What exactly is just doing it? So keeping this at the high level, how do we lead data-driven change? How do we just do it? Well, it's pretty simple. You borrow a change framework from renowned sources, in this case, the Lippitt-Noster model for managing complex change. You make it fit for purpose for building a data-driven culture by adding in a cultural element as depicted. You use it, and Bob's your uncle. Well, almost. Now, to just do it, as Art would say, you'd take the ultimate success formula, plan, do, check, act. You'd make sure that you're clear about each theme, the vision, the agreement, the skills, and so on. And just remember that clarity does not equal certainty. You can be clear that you don't know. And then what do? You work that core framework at whatever depth is right, is fit for purpose for your culture. So with the know-how, you plan, you workshop what your vision might be. You do something, preferably small scale to prove the concept. You check your results. In this case, whether you need to alter the vision a bit. You ensure you have clarity. And then you get on and you act on that. And you do that for each framework theme, vision, agreement, skills, benefits, and so on, all the way through to actions and outcomes, and ultimately continual improvement too. And you keep on doing that, repeating it, repeating it, repeating it regularly. Simples. Well, at the highest level, it is that simple. However, building and leading data-driven change and culture in an organization does require a concerted effort. Change is not easy. It involves leadership support, know-how, know what, know when. There will be training and creating an environment that encourages the use of data in decision making. Now, to lead that data-driven change, you'll also need a plan. Failing to plan is planning to fail. So here is a high-level plan. It's our agenda. Establish leadership support, identify key stakeholders, build a data-driven mindset, overcome resistance to change, implement good data governance, identify the people and the know-how you might need, provide training, watch out for the red flags, head them off at the pass. And just perhaps to note, there's not a mention of technology in sight there. So how, firstly, would you establish leadership support? Now, when you think about building a data-driven culture and gaining buy-in from the organization leadership, ask yourself this. Do people really want a data-driven culture, or do they really want the benefits that it can bring? Now, it's probably the latter. So when trying to sell this to the leadership, sell them the benefits and the solutions to their problems that a data-driven culture will bring. Uncovering those benefits is perhaps a $64 million question. And how to do that is a key message, which we'll leave to the end. So how can you start to establish leadership support? Well, it's not as simple as this, but a good start would be to demonstrate the value of data. Start by demonstrating to your leaders the value of your data and its potential to impact the organization. Use some case studies, industry research, data-driven examples. Illustrate how that data can help make better decisions, optimize operations, drive growth. We'll mention some later. Develop a clear strategy that outlines the benefits of the data-driven culture and how it aligns with the organization's overall goals. This should include a roadmap for implementing data-driven culture and the steps needed to achieve it. But the key word here is develop. Use the data from your pilots, your experiments, to develop your clear data strategy. And maybe to do that, you could put your own house in order first. And just as an example, what were your comments earlier in the chat? But thinking back to some of Berry's challenges, think about your challenges, hers, are there data quality issues you can deal with? Data roles and responsibilities you can embed within your team? And if there are, or whatever your challenges were, then assess the start point, do something you can deliver, measure the benefit, become data-driven yourself, evidence those outcomes. Now, building a data-driven culture involves collaboration between different stakeholders, and your leaders will probably want to know that their people have been involved. So perhaps a key action of just do it for you is to build a key stakeholders map. Now, your stakeholders may differ, but these are some to consider. We've talked about the executive leadership. It's critical in establishing the data-driven culture. They need to set the tone. They need to demonstrate their commitment and ensure that the necessary resources are available. But you might have to play slowly, slowly catchy monkey first before you get their attention. And finance, they control the income and expenditure. They produce the financial statements. They may handle payroll and assess the business risk profiles. They'll be pretty key. And IT is responsible probably for providing the infrastructure and probably the tools necessary for data collection and analysis and visualization. They can help ensure that there's the right technology to collect, store and analyze the data. Data management teams. Well, the clue's in the title. They're responsible, one would hope, for managing data and ensuring its quality and accuracy, that it is consistent and reliable. All of these are essential for making informed decisions. But where does your data management team sit? IT? Really? As part of your customer-facing teams? Okay. But if so, who is managing your non-customer data? Data analysts. The clue is in the title. They're responsible for analyzing data, providing insight. They can help identify patterns and trends and inform strategies and tactics. But where do they sit? But maybe they only sit in one or two areas. Maybe they only deal with pricing or product or marketing data. And if so, who does the operational data? And then there's the business leaders and the frontline employees, and last and certainly not least, the customers. Overall, building and leading a data-driven change and culture requires collaboration between many different stakeholders. But working together, you can create a culture that values data-driven decision-making. Now, I did mention creating a stakeholder management map, and for those of us that do that, those of you who've had any experience of working in projects, I wonder whether this sounds familiar. Why do we only create it with our project team? Now, maybe not using the word shown, but why don't we actually ask each stakeholder where they feel they sit on that map? That would be gaining their agreement, wouldn't they? Wouldn't it? And once you've created that map, why do we then leave it in the top drawer, never to be seen again? Surely we should be checking regularly that they're still in agreement, because things change, don't they? Now, you probably will need to build a data-driven mindset. And obviously educating importance on the importance of data is going to be pretty important to that. But as an aside, if you did create your stakeholder map, what are you actually doing? You're gathering stakeholder data. You're discussing it. You're making a judgment on it, aren't you? So here are some ways to educate employees on the importance of data. Some data literacy training, maybe on the basics of data, data analysis or data visualization. You can do it in different ways, in workshops, in seminars, e-learning modules, or coaching. Use real-life examples, bring it to life. Demonstrate the impact of that data on your organization. Show how your data has been used to solve the problems and make those decisions and drive growth. This can also help employees see the value of data and motivate them to become more literate. Make the data accessible. Provide people with the tools to analyze the data and visualize it. Help them see the data in a more tangible way. Help them understand its potential. Encourage employees to experiment. Help them become more comfortable with using this data. Well, develop your data champions. Identify people who are passionate about data for sure, but you may need to help them become data champions. And if you do, they can help to educate and inspire their colleagues to become more data literate. I've mentioned many times, use data to make decisions, create the culture, encourage data-driven decision making, recognize employees who use data to drive growth and improve outcomes, celebrate your data-driven successes, or, depending on your culture, don't talk about data. Just discuss in whatever words your audience, your stakeholders use. Make it real for them. And overall, educating employees on the importance of data is essential in building a data-driven culture. Provide the training, make it accessible, create the culture. Maybe you can become really data literate and really use data to make informed decisions. And if you want any help, get in touch. Now, if you do it right, maybe you don't need to overcome resistance to change. But how do you? How do you deal with this is how we do things around here? So firstly, if somebody says to you, that's not going to work for me, I don't think I can do that, or just doesn't do what they've agreed to do, that's good. It's an objection. And in sales terms, it's a buying signal. But all you need to do is address it and solve it. Solve it. Easy, right? Well, actually, compared to the ones that you can't see or hear, whether they are resisting, it is easy, because those are the bigger challenges to find. So you will probably need to follow some good basic change management practice. Communicate the benefits of the culture, help people understand why the change is necessary, perhaps even highlight the repercussions of not changing. Involve in the change process, seek people's feedback, encourage them to participate, help them feel more invested, address their concerns and fears, handle their objections. Now, this may involve providing reassurance about their job security, or addressing concerns about the new technologies, or providing some additional training or some assurance of support to help learn that new stuff and help them feel more comfortable with the change. Provide clear guidance on what is expected of people. This definitely can help reduce uncertainty and make it more manageable. Celebrate your wins, your successes. Recognize the people who've contributed to it. This can really help build momentum and gain buy-in. But for you, lead by example. Now, leaders must lead by example and model the desired behaviors and practices. Now, this may involve changing leadership styles and communication methods and decision-making processes. Maybe there's some coaching there. But a lot of all of that feels like another use for Plan, Do, Check, Act with clarity, doesn't it? So to build a data culture, it is important to establish data governance policies and procedures to ensure that the data is managed effectively and efficiently. So here are some key data governance practices that you consider. Now, we've talked about privacy and security and about establishing fit for purpose procedures and policies to protect your data. We've talked a little bit about data quality management, about accuracy and consistency and reliability. So maybe you need some data standards, some validation rules. Maybe you need to conduct some regular data quality checks, regular being the operative word. And data access and sharing. Who has access to the data? How can it be shared? Maybe you need to establish some better access controls and permissions, as well as procedures for sharing data with internal and external stakeholders. But what about data retention and archiving? Well, that's defining that data is retained for the right amount of time and securely archived when it's not. Now, why would you want to gather, analyze, and use data that's out of date, that you just don't need? What about integration? What are the policies to ensure that the data can be integrated and exchanged between different systems and applications? Well, think about it this way. If another part of your organization is dealing with the same customers, how can you ensure that if your data was right when it left you, it's still right after somebody else has been interacting with it? Data ownership and accountability, defining roles and responsibilities for managing data and assigning the ownership to different data sets, ensure that accountability. And finally, a data governance structure. Now, whether that's formally or informally, well, that's a cultural question. But you should establish a governance structure that defines the roles and responsibilities of different stakeholders involved in managing data. So, what do people need? What people do we need? What sorts of roles or expertise might we need to deliver this change? Now, keep up. Here are some examples. We'll need a project sponsor. We might need some project management, some requirements definition, some change management, some communications, some human resources, some legal, some data governance, some finance and business analysis, some process analysis, some re-engineering, maybe some software supplier selection, maybe some supplier management, maybe some architecture, design, integration, development, testing, data analysis, manipulation, transformation, report writing, data migration, support, a word I can't say, data democratization. The list just goes on. But don't lose hope. As we said right at the top, people do make it happen. And that's a key message. Now, research suggests, this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but research suggests that 97% of project failure reasons are down to people. They set the budgets, they set the requirements, they find the resources. They're not the supplier or their technology. Now, whether that's 100% right or not, whatever the mix of the list I've gambled through you need, people focus is going to be paramount. So why don't you think about it this way? Now, with the caveat that these people do have some or enough know-how, and partly for a bit of fun, so we like to have a bit of fun. Here's our take on a new RACI model. Maybe you just need people who are realistic about resources and achievability, who are action-oriented. They make things happen. They aren't afraid to challenge, and they have an inquisitive nature. And as a wise man once said to us, if you really don't worry too much about who gets the credit, delivering change can be easier than it sometimes appears. Now, remember, we're keeping this at the high level. Where should I be looking for the red flags? What are they? What can I do about it? Well, it's pretty simple. You borrow a change model from renowned sources, in this case, the Lippitt-Noster model for managing complex change. You make it fit for purpose. Okay, so that's a little bit flippant, but let's keep it simple. The red flags could be in any of these areas. So how do you spot them? Again, you could use the ultimate success formula: plan, do, check, act. But clarity, check, and act are vital here. At whatever depth is right is fit for purpose for your culture. Now, we know, wherever you are, that change is not easy. You must keep checking. Did you really have the know-how to begin with? Do you have it now? Do you still think that you know what to do and when to do it? Have you still got leadership and stakeholder support? How do you know? Have you asked them recently? Has anything changed? Have they got other priorities now that you don't know about? How has your plan changed? Because it will. Have you got people bought into why? Are you getting bogged down in details? What should you stop, start, or continue? How are you developing the skills, the ideas, your business case, your solutions? And most importantly, to recognize those red flags, how are you evidencing all of the above? Now, if you're not, leading by example walking the walk, you aren't being data-driven. So how do you expect others to be? Now, earlier, we said we'd offer you some case studies and some examples. Now, Tesco. Now, we all know about the loyalty cards, don't we? And Tesco's been using it for some considerable time to improve their customer loyalty and personalize their marketing efforts. But they've also been using it to optimize their supply chain. There's RBS, there's BA. More recently, BA has embraced this data-driven culture to optimize its flight routes, to improve its pricing strategy, and, like Tesco's, to personalize its customer experience. There's the National Grid. There's various police departments, New York, London Metropolitan Police Service, Los Angeles Police Service, Singapore Police Service, Walmart, IBM, Ford, Procter & Gamble. Now, for examples, Google is your friend. But these are all pretty big organizations, and most are not of this size. So, how about the membership organization who, with the right inquisitive data-driven minds, found that overall, although they had what they thought was 95% member retention, in some customer segments, it was 98%. However, in others, it was far worse. Now, without this insight, the outcome of their strategy execution would have been disappointing. Or the trade union, when representing members in dispute with the employers, gathered and analysed data across multiple repositories, found that some employers' employment policies led to a disproportionate amount of employee disputes to others. Now, feedback to that employer showed that a change of policy could result in their employees in work more of the time, with the employee more satisfied with their employer, and the union evidencing the benefit of membership. Or what about the IT department, wondering why their continual integration deployment approach seemed to be failing with certain applications, resulting in rework and defeating the object of continual integration? Well, combining some data sets, analysing and visualising the themes meant they identified what was going wrong and they could put it right. But what did Berry do? Well, Berry focused on the areas where there were willing stakeholders, in those involved with logistics and scheduling the police officers' deployment, not in solving crime. And she found, from analysing data captured from incidents on days of large sporting events, she could predict which areas in city centres should be the optimum places to deploy their resources. And that police presence then actually prevented incidents in the first place. Now, I'd just like to remind you, I said, all characters and organisations used in this presentation are, of course, entirely fictional. Now, do you remember what we've covered? We've talked about having and using methods and frameworks to help you start, plan, do, check, act with clarity alongside that core framework for change. We talked about some of the challenges, maybe putting your own house in order, remembering to identify all your stakeholders, map them out, manage them, check with them regularly. We've talked about know-how. We've talked about leading by example, being data-driven yourself. We've talked about governance. We've talked about finding the right people with the softer skills as well as the technical expertise. And we've just covered spotting the red flags. We've also talked about resistance. But there was one message I said earlier that I'd come back to. And do you remember that I said it was June 2021 when Berry started her new CDO job? And there's a reason for that. And that is that statistics show that the average time a CDO spends in their job is around 27 months. And in October 2023, we're around about that now. So perhaps part of the reason for such short tenure is that people don't start in the right place. So to paraphrase a bit from another quote, this time from Stephen Covey, seek to understand before you seek to be understood. Perhaps people don't really investigate and grasp the reasons why data-driven is of value. Maybe they just assume or assume too much. And you know what to assume is, right? If you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. Or maybe they get bogged down in producing endless variations of sexier graphs of the same data that tell the exec the same things they've already been told. Now, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Albert Einstein. Now, granted, you might well not know why to begin with, but it is 100% incumbent on you to go and find out. So if you don't know why, and you've put your house in order, but you believe in being data-driven, go and ask. Find some willing stakeholders who have some problems that you can solve and hopefully are worth solving. But if you do have a vision, remember that your vision should be a compelling picture of the future that aligns your stakeholders around the purpose of that initiative. And if you do have that, I would still urge you to try and find something, preferably fairly small, that you can do without huge resources to prove the outcomes you seek are achievable. It is much better to underpromise than overdeliver. So, if you want to find out some more, how can we help you? Well, through the book. I think Gething may or may not have put the link in the chat. I'm sure he can do that now if we are able to. But we can help you overcome your challenges, whether that's through the book, the workshops, coaching, training, practical solutions delivery. We think we can help you drive value from the data. And so if you want our help with vision and roadmap and maybe looking at your skills or your literacy and helping with your architecture, your tools, or maybe just some change delivery, please bear us in mind. Give us a shout. And if you know someone else who might or does, we'd very much appreciate any introduction. If you want those workshops, just DM us. If you want to discuss it, first chat's always free. If you want to have a browse, there's the website. So thanks for coming and thanks for listening. Now, whilst you think of some questions or comments, I was going to say put your hand up, but maybe put them in the chat, and maybe Gethin can have a look at that for me. I'll just give you 30 seconds or so to do that. But I want to leave you with a few more thoughts, mostly from our book. To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. Socrates. It is not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory. That's the professor again, Mr. Professor W. Edwards Deming. Without ambition, one starts nothing. Without work, one finishes nothing. The prize will not be sent to you. You have to win it. Someone called Ralph Waldo Emerson. Or, keeping it simple, just do it, as Art would say. And in a final word from Gethin and myself, if in doubt, be positive. Start somewhere, make a difference. Cost of help does not have to be huge. Price of your reputation almost always is. Now, there's a couple of slides after this. They won't take very long, but do we have any questions to ponder? If you want the Fit podcast,
there's nothing in the chat, Mark. Would you like me to put the mic on so people can ask?
Yeah, you can do that. And if whilst that's happening, if you could find the link to the podcast and the Fit Insights sign up form, that'd be great. Or we can stick them in the email afterwards.
We'll email them out. We'll email them out afterwards, mate. Hold on. Let me just let attendees have their mics, so people can chirp up if they want to say something. And then I'll give you back to you, mate.
Okie dokie then. So mentioned there was a couple more slides. So if you want some more free help, we're actually going to do a lessons learned from writing our book fairly shortly, and there will be how to project manage data-driven change, which I will say to you is a companion to the talk that I've just gone through. So some of it will be quite similar. But finally, I'm Mark. Thanks for listening. Oh, and the art speech. We'll either email that out to you, or we'll put a snippet of it in the in the comments for those that are still on here. We'll probably email it out to you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom.
Cheers, Tom. Thanks, Andy.
Right, cheers, Andy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers,
Ben.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Tom.
There we go.
Actually, I do have a really silly question that's kind of related.
No such thing. Come on, we all know that.
Will the recording be made available?
Oh, that's
to
a
us?
silly question.
Yeah.
Yes, it
Yes.
will.
That's right. I just
Yes,
want
it
to
will.
check because my data team couldn't turn up today, so I want to make sure that they get the opportunity to see that this. I think it'd be worthwhile.
Yeah, no
Cool,
worries.
Thank you.
We'll I'll send that out probably over the next day or so, Ben. So just look out for an email from me. But yeah, it'll definitely be coming out.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Now I will stop the recording here, I think.